What's going on, everybody? We're back again. Welcome to the fireplace, where the conversations are fire. Thank you for joining us today. Come on in the room. Come on now. Drop a hello in the comments. Drop a thumbs up in the comments. Drop a hand wave in the comments. Just don't sit there and watch. Say something in the comments, all right? Let me do my shout out so we can get to the show today. We have a great show for you today. Shout out to Alicia Way for these dope overlays. Yeah. Shout out to Lou Rogers, Vision Audio Visual. He is our videographer. Yeah. Shout out to Green Legion. Thank you for all your help promoting the fireplace. Now, shout out to my little brother. He calls me Big Brother, so I call him Little Brother. Shout out to my little brother, Keith Pelzer. I am in Keith's studio. Just not quite finished setting my studio up, but I should be done next week. So yes, thank you, Keith. But I gotta go. I gotta go. And just so you know, this podcast is being brought to you by Ecamm, virtual software made for Mac that carries your message across the world. Y'all, it is about to get hot up in here. I have a great guest for you today. You need to sit tight, pay attention, watch, and ask questions. Ask questions. Let me put the comments. I don't have the comments box up anywhere. Where did I do with it? I gotta find it. When I find it, there's my cursor. All right, I gotta find the comments box. Where's the comment box? Okay, it's here somewhere. I'll find it. I'll find it. But you go ahead and throw some comments up, and okay, I'm looking for it. Keith, where's the comment box? I lost it.
On the right-hand side.
On the right-hand side. See, my in-studio assistant. Oh, over here. That's right. Yeah. Okay. What am I doing? There it is. All right. We got it. What's up, cousin? I got my cousin on. Richard Melt. Thank you, Keith. He's my in-studio assistant. Thank you, Keith. But we got a great show for you today. And my guest today is in the studio. Yeah, she's with me right here in the studio, in person, live, and in color. Her name is Dr. Taunya Marie Tinsley. She wrote the book entitled 4 Quarters. Yep, it's a cultural and developmental approach to transforming, I should say, your spiritual autobiography. Watch this. She mixes psychology and spirituality in order to peel back the layers of our lives in order to gain an understanding of our past that will allow us to embrace our present so we can be productive in our future. Wow. All of that with an awareness at the same time and an appreciation of God in every quarter of our lives. Y'all, that's deep. That is deep. But I'm going to let her explain it to you. I'm going to let her talk to you about it. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome to the show Dr. Taunya Marie Tinsley. I wish I had some hand claps going on. Hey, what's going on?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Irving D. Fryer, for having me here today. I am honored and humbled, and I truly believe this is nothing but God having me here. And we are reconnected, talking about these life skills and the mental health and the spiritual development. So thank you so much for having me here today. And hello, everyone. And just like Dr. Fryer said, ask questions, because this is an opportunity to ask questions with somebody who is a licensed professional counselor who integrates spiritual and Christian perspectives.
Wow, she just said a lot, didn't she? You're doing a good job of looking in the camera. She's right here. She's right here next to me. Tell the people, since we're already there, y'all come on in the room, ask questions, but tell everybody. Just give them a little history so we can validate who you are. So when we're giving this information and you put us on your couch and you start talking to us, they know that you are certified, you're bona fide, right. You've been to school, you've done the work, and you're doing the work still. You're making a difference in the lives of people.
Absolutely. So let me just say, as a licensed professional counselor, Ph.D. level, my specialties are sports counseling, working with the athlete population across the lifespan, spiritual and Christian interventions in counseling, and multicultural and social justice counseling. These areas all encompass who I am and who I have been from childhood to the present day. I'm a former student athlete. Well, I still can play, so I just want to make sure people understand I still got skills, basketball-wise. But basketball served as a protective factor for me as a young person, and during college, it helped me to really have some goals and moving forward and having a vision for my future. My grandfather was very special in my life, and he really started planting the seed in my faith development and my ministry and understanding my role in ministry. And I've grown up in very diverse areas and really have seen what we need to do with disparities, whether it's racial disparities, gender disparities, religious disparities, that whole intersectionality. So that's who I am. But I will say it was not my plan to be a professional counselor. Wow. When I finished playing college basketball, I had the opportunity to work college admissions at my alma mater, Augsburg College, and coach high school basketball. Mm-hmm. I was a different kind of basketball coach. Before my girls could get on the court, they had to do career development, start looking at colleges, because I wanted to give them what I didn't get as a high school student athlete. Wow. And then decided to just go on and get my master's in higher education at University of Iowa, and had the opportunity to work in women's athletics. And I loved it, working in Division I, working with the athletes who needed life skills, transition to Iowa City. That was definitely a transition. And just being able to not only recruit, retain, and graduate. That was really important. Right. So, working in athletics, if you want to move up, you have to be willing to move around. So I went from Iowa to University of Pittsburgh, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. 9/11 happened when I was in the Eastern Shore, and I got burned out from athletics, and I could have went anywhere. I could have went back home to Minnesota. Illinois is where my family, and God called me back to Pittsburgh. And I was like, what? Pittsburgh? But it was a blessing in disguise, because when I got back to Pittsburgh in 2002, I lost my 24-year-old brother to gun violence, and it was suddenly and traumatically. And during that time, I went through my own depression. I went through my own grief process that was different from my family. And when I finally made the decision to go to counseling, I wanted to go to somebody who looked like me, who understood the Black family, who could integrate the spiritual and Christian perspectives. And I couldn't find anyone in Pittsburgh. I had to piecemeal my healing back together and my support. And that's when God called me to say, that's why I'm calling you to become a professional counselor and be that person. And that's kind of how I got into the field. And at my home church, Mount Airy Baptist Church, my pastor would talk about mental health from the pulpit. And that's when God said, okay, now go talk to him about integrating the counseling. And I was like, nah, that's okay. But after some time, I talked to my pastor, and he had a vision of having a counseling center right on the campus of Mount Arid Baptist Church. So when we started the counseling center, he said to me, now, by the mere fact you're being here, you got to strengthen your knowledge of theology and biblical principles. And I was like, I'm not
More
going back
studying.
to school.
Yeah, more studying.
But God called me back to school, and I went to Biblical Theological Seminary, now Missio Seminary, and then I went to United Theological Seminary, and that's where I brought in the doctor of ministry.
Wow, I've got a giant here sitting next to me, and you know what? We actually reconnected because in that journey, you didn't mention how we met.
Right.
In that journey, you actually trained me. There is a position that the NFL, I guess they still have transitional coaches.
Yes.
Well, yes, they do, because I did reapply for that job, and they said no. But there was a position that they started called transitional coaching, and we would help or assist those players who were transitioning out of the NFL into normal life or everyday life, and even the college players who were transitioning from college into the NFL. So we were trained. Dr. Tinsley actually trained me. Conflict resolution, suicide prevention, those kinds of areas. For what? It was like 8-9 months, wasn't it?
It was a whole year to get you ready for when we went to the rookie symposium.
Yes. So I'm familiar with her knowledge. I'm familiar with her ability to be able to teach what she knows and to apply it. So man, it's just wonderful having you here with us today. I'm excited. Tell me. I've read a statistic, and tell me if this is right. 1 of every 3 people in America need some type of mental health therapy. Mm-hmm. Is that true? So
depending on the study, 1 in 3 may need some mental health support. Mm-hmm. 1 in 5 have a diagnosable mental illness. And I think one of the things I want to clarify is that we all have mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know I'm crazy.
Regardless, we all have mental health. But when it comes to a mental illness, it's a clinical diagnosis.
Right.
So people could have symptoms of depression or anxiety, which are normal reactions to just life. Mm-hmm. However, when there's certain criteria that have been met, when it gets in the way of your cognitive, your affective, your behavioral, and it's lasted a certain time, then that's when we will diagnose someone. So I want to add another word to this conversation is wellness. Okay. We all have wellness, and there's different domains of wellness, whether it's occupational, social, spiritual, personal, emotional, financial. But within that wellness is mental health. If there's something going on in those domains of wellness, that could trigger some challenges with mental health. So some people just might need some guidance, some personal development support with their mental health. But there are those that, regardless of the issue, whether it's biological, whether it's based on community, genetics, that might have a diagnosable mental illness.
Right. What goes on, because I've experienced not a whole lot, but a little bit, some anxiety attacks. What's happening in our minds? I mean, I've done it before, waking up in the morning knowing I had to go play in a golf tournament. And for whatever reason, at that time, I was playing golf a lot. So I guess I was anxious or wanted to do well when I got there. I've done it in the gym before. I've been in the gym knowing that I was getting ready to go through a certain routine that might be pretty strenuous, and actually started the routine and had an anxiety attack right at the beginning. What's going on with that? And is there a way to control that, a way to keep that from happening?
Absolutely. So let me just say, some anxiety is normal. Everybody has anxiety. It becomes a challenge when it gets in the way of your functioning. Right. So if it gets in the way of you playing golf, if it gets in the way of your presentations. Now, there's good anxiety, but there's also bad anxiety as well. So when a person has a panic attack, that is when it's really getting in the way. A panic attack could feel like a heart attack, you're breathing hard.
That's
right?
a panic attack that I had. It wasn't anxiety because I was frozen. My hands got hot, my head got hot, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything.
And that's what we call when it gets in the way of your functioning.
Okay.
So Can you manage anxiety? Absolutely. So it's being aware of the triggers, and then allowing yourself to be mindful, to bring yourself back down, to focus on something, to breathe, to recognize that you're not in a harmful place, right? And then there's different techniques. We as clinicians might use cognitive behavior or rational emotive behavior, helping people to identify their triggers and their thoughts, and then reframing and disputing. So if, I go into the forest, I don't know there's a bear, but I start getting a panic attack because I think there's a bear. Now we have to really think about, where's the hypothesis? Is there evidence to support this hypothesis that there is a bear? I've only thought that there was because it was a forest. So I have to bring myself down and be in the here and now. And I also help people to understand that oftentimes when pay attention to your thoughts, because when your thoughts are so focused more on the future, that increases anxiety. When your thoughts are more focused on the past, that increases depression. So the goal is to be in the here and now.
Wow, the future anxiety, because you don't know. The future is, it's unseen.
Right.
It's all speculation.
Right.
And then, like you said, depression from the past. And the past is gone.
Right.
We're done with the past.
Right.
There's nothing that we can do to change it. There's nothing that we can do about it. Right. We can just live in the present. Right. Understand the past, but we got to stay in the present. That's awesome. Yep. I want to play a video, if that's okay with you. And listen, everybody, the video it's a little lengthy, but I want you to hang in there. I want you to pay attention. I want you to listen to the video. I don't know why people can't sit for a while. What is that? What is that, Doc? They say people can't sit for their attention span is real short. They can't sit for 5 minutes and pay attention. What happened to us? Pay attention to the video, please. Watch the video. It's going to be eye-opening, and you might just have a paradigm shift when you watch this. Check it out.
Listen to this both candid and transparent letter written by a pastor. Please excuse the length of the letter, but please engage me in listening to it. He writes, "Today I have vowed to be as honest and candid as possible. My recent physical and emotional problems have taken their toll on me. However, beyond the constant headaches I have been experiencing for several months and the pain in my back that has returned since my surgical procedure, I am now burnt out, stressed, depressed, and at the point in my ministry where I feel I cannot go any further. I have faithfully served this church for 18 years. During this time, I have earned numerous academic degrees, which I have completed without taking any time off in between earning each of these degrees. This will be my first year since I have been your pastor that I have not been enrolled in school. I have led us in constructing a new building, developed and hired staff, brought public recognition to our church, led us into purchasing a city block and 2 capital campaigns. I preach 3 times on Sunday and do so much more. Within the last 5 years, I have buried and preached the funerals of my dear godmother, 2 uncles, and 1 aunt of whom I was very close to, my young niece, my brother-in-law, my mother-in-law, and lastly, my dear father. In all of this, I have now hit a wall. Unfortunately, I'm at the place now where I no longer want to do ministry, and more specifically, pastor. A few months ago, I left our church after a meeting and I was drained. While driving home on the expressway, I began to approach my exit. However, just before exiting, I thought I was about to have a heart attack or even a stroke, as I could not breathe. I felt tightness in my chest. I immediately pulled over, stopped my car, and begged God not to let me die like this. And I began to take slow and deep breaths. After a few moments, I realized I was not having a heart attack or stroke, but rather an anxiety attack. Like everything else, I got past it, thank God, and moved on without telling anyone my experiences, and was back in the pulpit preaching on Sunday. I believe what is happening now is what I have been afraid of for quite some time. That is, I've been afraid to slow down and rest because I thought, felt, and believed that if I slowed down, I would die. I have been running at maximum speed of adrenaline, which is why I have been able to continue doing ministry without anyone, including myself, recognizing that I was going to crash. It is said that when a pastor draws close to 20 years in the same ministry setting and leading a growing church, they need to take a long and serious break or their serotonin levels will otherwise become depleted. This became an eye-opener to me as I began to read the book, Leading on Empty. I learned that serotonin is a neurochemical like an endorphin or a dopamine or oxytocin. It's natural feel-good hormone. Serotonin influences most brain cells, both directly and indirectly, and impacts levels of mood, anxiety, cognition, memory, and perception. It replenishes during times of rest and then fuels you while you're working. If, however, one continues to drive on without replenishing his or her store of serotonin, will be depleted. As a substitute, one's body will be forced to place the serotonin with adrenaline, which I have done. To run on adrenaline, however, is to destroy one's system, and one like myself will burn out sooner on the inside than they are able to see on the outside. Needless to say, chronic depression eventually takes over. There are times I'm in so much emotional pain and consumed with depression that I don't want to get out of bed and I dread morning coming. I have given so much of myself to help others, listening to them and knowingly at times carrying their burdens while still trying to live balanced and enjoy my own life. I did this well for years, but admittedly, it has caught up with me. As I sat at my desk at home a few days ago, I burst into tears, crying uncontrollably because I knew the place I was in and I could not see myself going forward. Depression has darkened my door to the point of suicidal thoughts. Sadly to say, the only thing that kept me from taking my own life was not only being convinced somewhere in the depth of my soul that such thought was a trick of the enemy, but more importantly, I wasn't sure if my wife and children would be able to make claim on my life insurance and be taken care of like they deserved if I committed suicide. Furthermore, I was at the point that if I knew my family would be financially stable, I was planning to resign from this pastorate last Sunday, walk away without any regrets. People have no idea how demanding the pastorate can be and how demanding people can be because everyone thinks they're the only one. Always being called on, the betrayal we experience by those on our ministerial staff, the pressure to feel the need to do better from one Sunday sermon to the next, the administrative workload, the pulling from one person to the next, and by way of outreach, there are non-members who call or show up at the church wanting their needs met. This over time takes a toll on a preacher. As a much younger preacher, some of these things made me feel like many of us want to feel, needed and valued. But now I feel imprisoned. I have set the bar high, not only at this church, but in other areas of my life. And amid the grind to do all things well, I, however, have not taken proper rest and time away. The end result has not only caught up with me physically, it has caught up with me spiritually and emotionally. This year, I celebrate having the longest tenure as pastor of any pastor at this church, including its founder. I rejoice greatly in this fact. None of the previous pastors preached or led this church as long as I have or accomplished what I've accomplished. And the one that came close, our founder, died of a heart attack in what I believe was his early 50s. I'm sorry that it has come to this, but I'm glad that I'm beginning to come to terms with where I am physically, spiritually, and emotionally. I am burnt out and I'm experiencing serious episodes of depression. It hurts and it's painful to acknowledge that I feel lost, and at this point I have nothing to give. I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore. The question I am left with is, what am I going to do in this right now moment? And the answer is, I don't know. My initial thought was to resign, leave everything, and just float, waiting for the next thing to do. But deep down, I know God has me at this church, and for some reason, there's a very small part of me that believes God is not finished with me yet. I am still coming to grips with where I am and how I feel physically and emotionally. Yet I am still praying when I can and have strength to, and I'm thinking everything through. Sincerely, God's servant, and possibly your former pastor. I wrote that letter in April of 2010.
Wow. First, we want to thank Dr. Croft for allowing us to use that video here at the fireplace. Man, there's some things in that letter that he wrote that I can actually identify with. Many pastors that I've talked to, many preachers that I've talked to have gone through a season in their ministry, in their life, dealing with some of those same things. How does that happen, Doc? And how do we prevent that? I mean,
Right.
how do we get to that? How do we allow ourselves to get to that point?
Well, I'd also like to thank Dr. Croft for allowing us to use the video. And, one of the things that I appreciate about Dr. Croft is modeling and being transparent. Because we just talked about mental illness. It's an equal opportunity illness. It does not discriminate based on athletes, based on clergy, faith leaders. So, when we say 1 in 5 can have a diagnosable mental illness, it can be based on any religious denomination. But we also know with clergy in the faith-based environment, there are stigmas and there's biases. That's why I appreciate Pastor Curtis, Dr. Curtis, and Dr. Croft really bringing it to the pulpit and being transparent to help the congregants, but also to help clergy. So we have to dispel those stigmas and myths. And I think that was what Dr. Croft was trying to do.
Right.
He was trying to say you can't be effective as a pastor, as a preacher, if you're not taking care of yourself personally, because that can spill over onto your congregants in your churches.
Yes. I'm being a former athlete, and I still got it too, by the way. And you said you still can ball. I got a little bit.
Yes.
I got a little bit of something still. But I believe that there's a thin line between being tough and just plain old being stupid. And there was a lot of times in my career, and even now, I think, that toughness that we've developed over those years in sports, there were times I really shouldn't have been on the field, thought I was being tough, but I was being stupid. And God just, was taking care of me. And that kind of has matriculated over into my everyday life, whether it's pastoring, whether it's playing golf, whatever it is that I'm doing. I push myself to the point sometimes where I'm almost doing myself harm. And we think that because as pastors that we have a call and that we've been sent by God and that the call is for real, that we can do the impossible. No, we can't do the impossible. We're human. All of us are human. Those of you that I'm talking to right now, we're human. That's all. We're no more than that. We're no less than that, but we're no more than that. And we can't do anything more than what God has given us the ability to do. So, staying up and working late hours and working every day and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, something has got to give. And I think that's part of what Dr. Croft was trying to get across to his congregants and to us today. You mentioned it in sports. I mean, it's happening. There's an awareness. Mental health is being made aware of. Simone Biles, Kevin Love in the NBA, Osaka with tennis. You got these Phelps with swimming. You have these athletes who are starting to speak out and making it aware. Again, with that tough guy, I'm a tough guy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm mental health, that means you're weak. If you got problems with your thinking or you have to go sit and talk to a therapist, that means something's wrong with you. We as black people, we do the same thing. African Americans, something's wrong with you. No, just shake it off. Snap out of it.
Right.
If you got to go talk to a therapist, there's something wrong with you. And there's a blackness about it, a cloud that comes with it, a stigma, as you said, that comes with it. Why is it being so voiced now? What's happening? What's going on? Why are we being made more aware of mental health now?
All right. Well, I think that we have people in high platforms and different contexts really talking about help-seeking behavior and trying to dispel those stigmas and those biases. So we have been doing, a great job. We have more work that we have to do. I think right now, too, remember I talked about wellness and the domains of wellness. We could even just say mind, body, and spirit. mind, body, and spirit are connected.
Mm-hmm.
And if something's going on with the mind, it's going to impact the body, the physical. If there's something going on with the body, it's
Right.
going to impact. So
Good.
so now I think we are doing a better job to understand that connection. And I really appreciate what you said in terms of, even as an athlete, as a pastor, that you can be stressed. I could go on and talk about the technical pieces of it, but when we get stressed, that increases our cortisol in our brain. Excessive cortisol can chip away at the dopamine and the serotonin and increase depression and anxiety. So that's why we're always telling people, manage the stress, because without your permission, your own stress can
Right.
trigger your depression and your anxiety. But guess what? People keep pushing, right? Keep pushing.
Yeah, we do.
And then they have back pains,
Right.
stomach pains,
Right. Yeah.
headaches, trying to figure out what's going on with them physically. And many times I get referrals from primary care physicians that there's nothing physically going on. It's what's going on emotionally that's manifested in the body.
Yes.
And the best thing, you mentioned Simone Biles. She was talking about there was a disconnect from what was happening with her mind and what she wanted her body to do. They talked about those twisties. We may not be elite athletes as she right now, but
Right.
it could have been detrimental to her physical health
Right.
if she's in the air and then lands on her neck.
Yes.
We do the same thing as lay people. You ever forget about where your keys are and they're in your hand?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I've done that
Right.
recently.
Where's my phone? It's in my pocket.
It's in my pocket.
Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes without our permission, there can be a disconnect. And I think what we're trying to do now is we're doing a better job of helping people to understand there's a connection between mind, body, and spirit.
Oh, okay, now you're scaring me because is that normal to walk in the room and forget why you walked in the room you walked in the room to get something or to do something, and you walk into the room and you're like, okay, I forgot what I came in here for.
Right.
Is that normal, or is there something going on,
No,
Doc?
it's normal, but that's why if it continues to happen,
Okay, I
we're
got you.
really talking about the concentration and
Okay.
the memory, because especially when we have so much on our
That's what
mind
it
and
is,
we're
yes.
trying to do multiple things. So it's really being intentional and being focused.
I want to put a comment up that Keith is, we're in Keith's studio, but this is good. He says, I recall Dr. Croft preaching a pastor friend's anniversary. Before that letter, Dr. Croft left out the fact that part of his burnout was also while fueling others, giving to
Absolutely.
others, and we're depleting ourselves. That's something we have to really be careful about.
Absolutely.
How important is it to be able to identify with people that you're trying to connect with, that you're trying to assist, that you're trying to help? And I ask that question because of this. When I was playing ball, they didn't have the kind of assistance for this area or this arena back when I played ball. There was a guy, and I'm going to call him out. There was a guy named Dr. Nikolai, was his name. And I needed counseling. I did. I was a very off puppy back then. I'm still off. I'm just covered by the blood of Jesus. Amen. But he didn't do anything for me. When we sat down and we talked, it was just, there was no connection at all. And he was of no help at all when it came to me. He didn't understand who I was. He didn't understand where I came from. He didn't understand what I was going through as a black man. He didn't as an NFL player, as a young man who came from a dysfunctional family. He didn't understand any of that. And there was no connection at all. And it made me worse, because it made me angry for the fact that I had to go and sit and listen to this cat that wasn't doing any good to me. It was just another nuisance in my life. How important is it when you're doing counseling, for those of us who are trying to find a counselor, a therapist, to make sure we're able to find someone or a counselor to connect, to be able to identify, particularly with culture, with when it comes to ageism, when it comes to sexism, all that kind of stuff that we need to make sure that plays a factor into us making sure that we're moving in the right direction when it comes to our mental health.
Absolutely. I think the therapeutic relationship is very important. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And oftentimes, before we are getting into the crux of whatever the presenting issues are, it's time to develop that therapeutic relationship. Not only do we need to get to know our clients and who they are, but also allow them to get to know us.
Right.
So even though the counseling session is about them, I want my clients to feel comfortable. And so, for me, and when I'm training counselors and sports counselors and those in pastoral counseling, I'm training them to help the clients do 4 things. 1, increase their level of self-awareness. They're already coming in with a level of awareness, but they are the experts of themselves. 2, helping them to make sense of what's going on. These are normal reactions to these extraordinary issues or experiences that are going on. Because just like you said, what's wrong with me? Am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. Let me give you some psychoeducation to help you make sense of what you're going through. 3, giving skills and techniques, and then developing the therapeutic relationship. That surrounds all the first 3. And oftentimes people want to be solution. I just need the skills. I just need the tools. However, those skills is based on the therapeutic relationship and based on that self-awareness. And so it's really important. And so, does there have to be a perfect match between client and counselor? No, that's not going to happen because we have intersectionalities. But what you want to look for is, does the person know and have some knowledge about the context of what you are coming from, whether it's race, gender, religion, and being able, because although I integrate spiritual and Christian perspectives, I have clients coming to me that are representing denominations or religions that I'm not familiar with, but I understand the context. And so then we work together in partnership. And that's the other part. When we talk about the therapeutic relationship, working in partnership with the person.
Okay. And it helps when you listen to the therapist. What has COVID-19 done with us, America, or I should say the world, I guess, in terms of our mental health? I mean, I hear so many different things being said about the mental state of people having been locked up and not being able to go out, and we're having to wear masks. COVID being such a threat to us, the older people who have physical issues, ailments, just all of those things. Every day you turn on the news and it's something else. It's something more. It's something even more drastic. What has COVID done to us in terms of our mental health, and how do we battle against that?
Absolutely. So one of the things I think it's important to understand, the last 18 months, not only have we had a pandemic, a health pandemic, but we've had racial injustices, we've had political uprisings, and all of those have converged together. And so what it has done is increased anxiety, right? COVID, with the world shutting down, people getting laid off. So now it's impacting that financial wellness for some, if they financially, or here's the other thing. People were so used to being busy. Now I got to be under the same roof with everybody 24/7. I got to get to know you in a different way. Is it a safe place to be? Can I be my genuine, authentic self? So then it impacted relationships, family, marriages. I've had more people coming in for marriage counseling, couples counseling, family counseling, in addition to individual. Worry about family members, worried about friends. With the large number of deaths due to COVID, grief and loss. But also we have to be aware of social anxiety. That is really significant right now, going back, because with the Delta variant, going back into work, going back into school, going back into the churches, it has increased the social anxiety. And one of the things we have to be aware of is this past 18 months have been traumatic for some people. So some people are experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. There's also this concept called race-based traumatic stress. And so those are all these different things that have happened as a result of the pandemic. Now, I also say that the pandemic is a crisis. A crisis can be dangerous, but it can be an opportunity for growth, because now that everyone is being still, is there some unfinished business from the past, or is something being triggered that I need to work on now to help me to grow, to move forward? Is this a time for me to reach out for help as we enter back into the world right now?
Right. But how do we get people to do that? Because they're so, again, like you said, all of the different variables that are taking place, a lot of them are negative, whether it's political, whether it's racial, whether it's financial, whether it's physical, whatever it is, whether it's been death. All of these different things are happening and they're screaming at us. How do we silence them and maintain that focus that you're talking about?
Right. So now I'm thinking of external locus of control and internal.
Right.
And really it's saying, you know what? I have no control over the external. Right now I got to focus on me so that I can be healthy, so I can be healthy for the people around me as well. And so really focusing on the internal and saying, hey, right now with telehealth and telemedicine, you can get counseling that's online and in your own home, and getting support. Now, remember, I also have to say this. You do not have to have a mental health illness to see a counselor. You could be just struggling with some wellness or need some to hear yourself talk and to problem solve and to decision make. So you could see a counselor or a therapist just for your wellness, just for your mental health. Just like we go to the doctor and get a checkup, physical checkup, we can go and get a mental health checkup. Right.
Say that again, Doc. You don't have to have a mental illness to go see a therapist.
Absolutely.
It's okay.
Yes.
It's all right. It's a good thing. Let's put up another question here, or another comment, I should say. Here we go. Actually, that's my mother.
I met your mother.
Yes, you
at
met
your
my mother.
church.
She says, "Do you think having nightmares often is caused by a mental health disorder? Nightmares on a frequent basis."
There could be some relationship. It doesn't necessarily have to be. There's different research studies on nightmares and dreams, but trauma is what could trigger those nightmares. And the post-traumatic stress syndrome could trigger those nightmares. But those nightmares could be triggered by some trauma early in life. See, we as a people, we're resilient, right? And so if we've experienced something traumatic as a child, so I believe early development impacts later development, but we're resilient.
Right.
What I have found during this past 18 months during COVID, people who have been resilient, who have worked through the trauma, it's been re-triggered just based on the racial injustices, the microaggressions, the pandemic itself. And so then they might start having nightmares and dreams, and kind of recollecting those things that have happened to them in the past.
Okay. Yeah, that's, wow. That's a lot. You deal with a lot, Doc.
It's truly, I think for me, it's truly a gift from God. We talk about God was the wonderful counselor, and I'm just modeling to be somebody that can provide that wonderful counseling for the people that I work with. And I guess I just also want to mention, because you were talking about, you and I are both, athletes, and I believe sports is a gift from God as well. And we know throughout Old Testament and New Testament, sports and athletics is being used, those metaphors, right? Even if we had some trauma as a child or adolescent, tough time growing, sports became a self-protective factor for us. So oftentimes when it comes to athletes, clergy, those fields, those career fields, those extracurricular activities become self-protective factors. When you take it away, that stuff that was going on before starts to come back to the surface.
Right. Wow. You wrote a book. We're not going to get through everything today. You're just absolutely wonderful. You're helping me.
Thank
you're helping
you.
me. The next time we come back, I'm going to have you diagnose me.
Okay.
You're going to come back and I'm going to drop all this stuff on you.
Yes.
We're going to peel the layers off from the past so we can deal with the present, so we can be productive in the future.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
You wrote a book.
Yes.
Here it is, 4 quarters. You see that, y'all? Right there. I started reading it the other day, but I'm still getting moved in, so I haven't gotten through it yet. But this is interesting.
Yes.
Tell us about your book. Take the people through the four quarters, if you may, in a
Absolutely.
quick synopsis. It's a great book. I'm gonna put you up by yourself. There you go.
Absolutely. So, sports was an instrumental part of my life. It was a self-protective factor. I'm not sure where I would be or what I would be doing right now if I didn't have basketball in my life. So that is a significant part of me. Now, let me tell you how I got to this book. When I went to United Theological Seminary, our first semester, we had to write our spiritual autobiography. The purpose of writing our spiritual autobiography was to understand where God has had his hands and presence in our lives, because those are places that he may be calling us back to help other people, to minister, to teach, to counsel. I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. I'm a counselor. I'm all about self-awareness. It was probably the most challenging assignment I've ever had, because I had to come to terms with some of my own unfinished business. So I'll put a pin there. When I started working in private practice and at the Mount Airy Counseling Center, I was working with couples and families. That's not why I wanted to go into counseling. I really wanted to help people with grieving. Don't tell God what you're going to do, because he's got another plan for you. So Pastor Curtis would send couples to me. Couples would go out and say, oh, Dr. Tinsley, it was helpful for us. I didn't want to work with couples. And there was one particular couple that after every session, even though I was helping them, it was triggering something for me. And I remember going to Pastor Curtis, and he said, Taunya, what is going on? You're going to have to figure out what this is about so that you don't have to keep getting triggered after your sessions. Going to the spiritual autobiography, I found that places that God had his hands was my own family, my family system, and some unfinished business that I had to kind of work through with my biological father, my grandfather, and just the family dynamics, and understanding the unique fact that I have 3 different families that I am made of, and just embracing that, because I'm not sure that was something that I could embrace, the 3 different families that I come from. And so the spiritual autobiography is also helped me to understand I'm supposed to work with families and couples. And once I wrote mine, I embraced it. And that is part of my specialty in working with families and couples. So I found that there were no books out there or guides for writing your spiritual autobiography. We all go through different developmental trajectories, and I thought it was going to be important to understand normal developmental trajectories from a cultural perspective, and then understand what you may need to go back and work on to be effective in where you are in your ministry, in your counseling, and your teaching today. So the 4 quarters represent age domains and developmental trajectories. And there are questions within each quarter and the overtime to ask you about your own experiences so that you can begin to reflect on your story, but also to be more effective in what you're doing today. And when I say ministry, I'm not just talking about clergy or faith-based. I look at churches where 2 people are gathered in his name. So you could be anywhere outside the physical 4 walls of the church and engaging in ministry and teaching and counseling. So the book is designed for you to understand your story, how God has been a part of your life, understanding normal developmental and cultural influences, but also finishing unfinished business so that you can move forward in your life.
Wow. I understand the psychology part of the mind, making sure we're mentally, but we need to make sure that God is the biggest part of this, meaning God is real. He is reality.
Yes.
When we don't understand who he is and know who he is and carry ourselves accordingly, then we are out of, tell me if I'm wrong, okay? Then we're out of touch with reality.
Right.
We're out of touch with reality.
Right.
And when we're out of touch with reality, then we're unable to deal properly with humanity.
Right.
If we can't deal properly with each other, we can't deal properly with ourselves until we're in touch with reality, and God is that reality.
Yes.
And then when we're out of touch with reality, which is God, then we don't deal properly with humanity, then it shows up in different areas.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned family, and unfortunately, a lot of this family mess that goes on in the past has to do with sexuality.
You're right.
And we not understanding, again, the reality, not dealing properly with humanity, and it shows up in distorted sexuality.
Right.
And then we got to peel back the layers of the onion all the way back to our past. Why is that so important to go back and to not necessarily relive, but, you know, you experience that hurt, that pain that took place when you were younger, but it's necessary to do that to receive the healing to make things right in the right now, to make things good right now.
You know, and I love what you just said. And I think one of the things we got to go back, I'm going to just go back to Genesis and the fall, Adam and Eve.
Yep.
The reason I wrote this book is because God knows the plan for us, right? But we also have to recognize we were born into a broken world. And as a result of the fall, that we have broken relationship with self. So that impacts our self-esteem, the guilt that we may have, the shame, broken relationships with others and relationships, broken relation with God and creation. The whole idea is to restore those relationships.
Gotcha.
And unless we reconcile and restore who we are, that's going to impact our relationships with other people. So the whole idea with this spiritual autobiography is really looking at scripture and God's word. You know, people say, why would God allow me to go through this? Why is God letting me this happening to me? And once we really sit down and understand, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, for recollection.
Yes.
That, you know, Jesus died on the cross for us to live. So now we have to ask ourselves, what patterns of behaviors in our life must die in order for us to live? So holding on to the guilt, holding on to the shame, we got to let that go so we can fully live the way God has planned. So in the book, I really talk about Jeremiah 29:11. You know, he wants to bless us and prosper us, not harm us, right? Psalm 139, he formed us. He already knew the plan. Did he say everything was going to be perfect? No. We're going to go through peaks and valleys, but to understand what that means for us in our own life, right? But also helping other people.
But without God, it's impossible.
Exactly.
Without the spiritual side, it's impossible.
Right. And that's why the spiritual autobiography goes back, because if you really reflect on your life, God has been in your life
the whole time.
The whole time. And so now let's identify those places you didn't think he was with you, but he was actually with you.
Yes. And that helps or assists in healing your relationship and how you deal with God.
Yes.
Knowing, instead of thinking he was forsaking you and he wasn't around, or God was doing something or allowing something to cause pain in your life. And that does happen. God does. I mean, he loves us. So he chastises us. He punishes us when we do wrong, just like a parent does. And if we, being evil, know how to take care of our kids and raise our kids, how much more does our Heavenly Father, the Bible says, know how to take care of us? God knows what's best for us, even the painful sides of it. God knows, and all things work together. I'm not trying to sneak a preach. You were preaching, but all things work together for good, you know, and there's got to be painful consequences to disobedience. Got to be pain. God, you don't love your children if you don't punish them. Yeah. There's a question here, or there's a phrase here. Let me put this comment up here. A family member doesn't recognize their need for therapy. Is there any way to approach this discussion with them?
Absolutely. I would say first,
This is Dawn. I'm sorry, Dawn.
Yes. Dawn. Yes, there is a way. First, arm yourself with knowledge, right? And then we have to walk alongside. We got to help increase people's knowledge and their awareness. Again, people don't care what we know until they know that we care. So how can we present this information and intervene by giving the information? And then one of the things that I have had and I suggest, go to the primary care doctor with them and talk to the doctor and talk about what may be going on, and allow the primary care physician to help with saying that there might be something going on emotionally or mentally, or recommend, I'll go with you to counseling together. Therapists will allow you to come together to do that handoff as well.
That's good information. That's good information, because we do. Now you can't just go tell them shake it, shake it off, snap it, snap out of it. No,
No.
we don't want to do that
No.
because if there is an issue, yes, you have to be delicate about how it is you approach them. But that's a great question. Thanks, Dawn.
Yes.
Doc, we're almost out of time. But here's what I want to say, and you're going to validate this for me. Doc is going to be moving forward in the fireplace or at the fireplace. She is going to be our in-studio therapist. So we're going to call on her from time to time when the opportunity avails itself to bring her in, to bring about a quick or resolve to any issue that may be happening. If someone's having some mental health issues, or if there's some conflict resolution or any of that kind of stuff going on in any of our shows, we're going to call her in, bring her in, and she's going to be our in-house therapist for the fireplace. Amen. That's good.
Amen.
That's good.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to be better off moving forward because I'm going to have somebody to talk to. and you know, we really do have to put that pride aside, particularly men, particularly African American men. We have this thing of being tough. We won't even go to the doctor. I've had so many friends, physical doctor. I'm talking about the physical doctor, not the mental doctor, but I've had friends die 20 years ago that were my age. They've died 20 years ago because they did not go get a checkup. And had they gone to get their yearly checkup or a yearly checkup, they would still be alive. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that we pass away from or we get sick as a result of are preventative things that we can go to the doctor and get prevented. And the same thing with mental health. We need to talk. We need to get it out. You can't just hold it in. You'll cause an implosion. Amen?
Amen.
And with everything going on, tell us, Doc, how as we move out of COVID, actually, we might get shut back down again. Mm-hmm. But as we start trying to move out of COVID-19 and what has been happening, what's been this big crisis we've been in for well over a year now, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of mentally?
Absolutely. Pay attention to where your thoughts are. Are they in the here and now? Are you focused on the past and before the pandemic and wanting things to go back to the way it was before the pandemic, because it's going to be very different? Are you really focusing so much on the future and when things are going to get better and not allowing yourself to live in the here and now? Mm. Pay attention to your mood. Pay attention to if you are still engaging in normal activities and engaging in activities of interest. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to family members and coping strategies and your own coping strategies. How are you trying to self-soothe with what's going on? Is it a healthy self-soothing or an unhealthy self-soothing? And pay attention to emotions. Pay attention. I always tell people, own your emotions. But when you get stuck in them, that might be a flag and a sign that you just need to have somebody to talk to as well.
And stay off of Amazon.
Right.
Boy, me and Amazon have a really good relationship.
Absolutely, yes.
One last thing, this just popped in my mind, and you mentioned this earlier, was part of one of the reasons that you started down this profession. That was grieving. Mm-hmm. Grieving.
Yes.
A lot of us have lost people,
yes.
Young and old, during COVID-19, and people grieve differently.
Yes.
Talk to us just for a moment about that before we leave. Because people, I guess they think that it's universal, mm-hmm. that there's a certain amount of time that you're supposed to grieve. And, if you're still grieving about your grandmother or your mother or your cousin or your friend that passed away a year ago, there's something wrong with you, mm-hmm. That you need to get over it over a certain period. No, it's necessary,
yes.
right? And grieving is normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nobody does it the same.
Right.
And nobody does it for the same. It doesn't happen for the same amount of time for anybody. So just before we go,
yes.
just tell us how in your mind,
yes.
how we deal with that
and
what's appropriate.
Absolutely. So I'll just reiterate what you just said. No one person's grief is like another person's grief. So it's not a one size fits all. I kind of adhere to Kubler-Ross's stages of grief and loss, and I also focus on Worden's task of mourning. So the stages of grief and loss, you can move forward, you can move backwards, and move in and out. Shock and denial. Did that really just happen? Did we just lose that person? Did I lose my job? Is that relationship over? There can be anger. There could be depression. And just because you're experiencing depression from grief doesn't mean you have a mental illness. If we start getting into the complicated grief, we may look at that. But depression is normal, just loss of interest, sleeping too much or not enough sleeping, eating too much, just a loss of interest in activities. And then there's bargaining. Well, if I would have just done this, then this wouldn't have happened. And then there's acceptance. But here's the thing. It's not accepting that the person or the situation is gone, but accepting that this is just a part of life,
Right.
that you have better days, more better days than bad days, because you're always going to have, bad days when it comes to grief. Even though I lost my brother in 2002, there might be times during holidays I may have a bad day. That doesn't mean that I didn't accept that, but I do have more better days than bad days.
Right.
Now, when it comes to grieving, there's 4 tasks. There's the acceptance. There's allowing yourself to go through the pain and emotion of the grief and loss. See, we don't like that pain
Right,
and emotion.
right,
So we want
right.
to self-soothe. I'm going to overwork. I might drink or whatever.
Get on Amazon.
Get on Amazon
Amazon.
and shop so I don't have to feel that. But in order to allow yourself to move through grief, you got to allow yourself to feel the pain and emotion. The third
Right.
task is redefining your identity. Who are you as a person with this loss? Who are you spiritually? And who are you and how you relate to other people?
Right.
And then finding an enduring connection. When I decided to go to counseling after losing my brother and deciding to get into the counseling field, everything I do in counseling is part of my enduring connection with my brother.
Wow. And I want to, we have to go off, but
Okay.
I want to talk about depression. We're going to do that next time you come in. We're going
Yes.
to talk about, signs of depression, you don't want to self-medicate or self-diagnose, but you want to know some of the signs, whether it's someone that and you're observing, or even for yourself.
Right.
If you're getting out of hand or things are spinning out of control, you want to be able to know at least a little bit that this may be what I'm dealing with right now. So matter of fact, go ahead, Doc, do that.
Okay.
I know you want to.
Well, let me also say, because this will address Dawn too, and
Okay,
this idea
yes,
of depression.
yes,
One of
good.
the websites that I really, really like to refer people to is NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness.
Mm-hmm.
And on this website, they have information for families and working
Right.
with families, depression, anxiety. So when we talk about depression, are they engaged in the normal activities? Has there been a loss of interest? Are they isolating themselves? Is there a concern about being hopeful about the future? Sleeping too much, not sleeping at all. Eating too much, not eating at all. Teary-eyed. Those are different signs. And we all get the blues, Doc.
Right.
We all get the
right.
blues. But when they start to last
Don't stay
longer
there,
than
yes.
2 weeks
Don't
or
stay
longer,
there, yes.
then there should be a flag to say, let's assess what's going on.
Yeah. I was going to say I stay depressed all the time then. Doc, it's been great.
Yes.
Good. It's been good having you on the show. You're full of so much information and knowledge. It's just, I feel better. So much better. Yeah.
That's not my gift,
Since
so I'm not
I
going to sing.
laid my burdens down. Yeah, okay, I'm done. Look, that's going to be it for the show today. We want to thank our guest, Dr. Taunya Tinsley, for being here with us. She was awesome. We're going to bring her back. This is not the end. She's our in-studio resident, not resident, in-studio official therapist from this moment forward. Shout outs to Alicia Way for these overlays. Shout out to Lou Rogers, Vision Audio Visual, our videographer. Shout out to the Green Legion. Keith Pelzer, this is the last time I'm going to bother you in your studio. Thanks for allowing us to be here today. You're awesome, my brother. This podcast is brought to you by Ecamm, virtual software made for Mac. that carries your message across the world. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. Well, not this place. It'll be my place. Next week's guest will be none other than Sterling Sharp, of the Green Bay Packers. All you football fans, all you Packer fans, you don't want to miss next week. My name is Irving Fryer. Thanks for joining me at the Fireplace, where the conversations are fire.